Good evening, everyone. Good evening, everyone. Good evening. Good evening. We are about ready to begin the program. We will be having our Boy Scouts come in. Please rise.
Please, and arms.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Order, arms. Order, arms. Detail, uncover.
Thank you. At this time, I would like to ask Rabbi Max Edwards from Temple B'nai Abraham to come forward.
Good evening. This evening, I would like to begin with a prayer of honor for the victims, to the now over 3,000 souls lost to the physical world, yet deeply alive in mind and memory, for their families who sent their loved ones off to work on that clear blue sky of a morning, expecting, as we all do, that they would be back in time for dinner. For the rescue teams and volunteers, firefighters, police officers, EMS workers, hospital staff, for their selflessness in the face of fear, for the lives saved and the lives lost. That day shattered our societal innocence, left us with a world of homeland security, threat levels, metal detectors. The anxiety of tragedy remains, our identity as children, spouses, parents, friends, and Americans forever changed. We pray that our collective tragedy remain far from collective fear, that our world becomes one where xenophobia and racism prove to be distant memories. Our communities lost loved ones, but not love. Coming together as one to mark September 11th, 2001 is itself a measure of defiance. To say that fear and hopelessness will not define us. As we continue to ride the unending waves of grief and mourning, God of compassion, we pray that one day we as humanity will reach low tide, that we may one day ride the waves of memory, that we will once again see opportunity and hope in blue skies. May it be your will, and may we always honor the memory of our departed. Amen.
Thank you, Rabbi. And good evening, everyone. And before I share a few remarks, I'd like to recognize our Livingston Township Council and our township managers. We have Deputy Mayor Al Anthony. We have with us Council Member Rosie Begoli, Council Member Sean Klein, Council Member Ed Meinhardt. We also have our town manager with us, Barry Lewis, our Deputy Town Manager, Russ Jones, our Assistant Town Manager, Adam Lerner. I'd also like to recognize all of the members of our Livingston Police Department, our auxiliary police, our fire and volunteer fire department, our first aid squad, and Hatsala for being here with us. Tonight I also see one of our former mayors, Rudy Fernandez. I didn't see any other ones, but if I do, I will recognize them as they come in. Tonight we also need to remember a former mayor, Joe Fertiliso, who had recently passed away. Maybe we could just offer a moment of silence for Joe. Thank you. I also want to recognize here today all of our veterans. Thank you for what you have done for this country. We are sincerely grateful for the sacrifices you and your families have made and for all your services. So thank you to all of our veterans. I want to thank the Livingston Department of Public Works who continue to make sure Livingston events are set up, such as this event tonight, which was set up in two places, at our Memorial Gardens and here, just in case it rained. And I guess this council chamber won. Want to thank the Senior Youth and Leisure Services, in particular Corinne Judge. This is Corinne's first year of coordinating and undertaking the responsibilities for tonight's Ceremony of Remembrance. Thank everyone who is participating and making tonight's event special and memorable. I want to welcome and recognize Commissioner Pat Siebold. I do know that Assemblyman John McKean will be coming in, visiting us, and if he does and when he does, we will give him some time to speak today. On the back cover of the program, there's a list of names and organizations taking part in today's remembrance ceremony. Thank you very much, everyone, for making today special. I also want to thank the 9/11 Design Committee. You know, your thoughts and vision of our Memorial Garden brings a sense of peace to our community. With that, we also need to remember Bunny Ratner. You know, Bunny's no longer with us, but her memory remains with all of us, especially during the 9/11 events. For many, many years, Livingston's 9/11 Remembrance Ceremony, it was an event that Bunny planned and coordinated. We will always remember her, and we do miss her. Never forget. You know, those are two words associated with 9/11. You know, each of us, you know, has our own story about 9/11. You know, mine's a little bit different than many. I have a friend and a mentor named Frank Riley, who I make sure I give him a call every September 11th. As I said to Frank today, I said, Frank, I'm glad you're still with us. Now, September 11th, 2001 was a horrible day. Terrorists on our own land killed thousands of people. And we remember these people, and we remember also our police, our fire, our first aid, and all those others who sacrificed their lives to save others. You know, as I said, I call Frank on this date every year. Frank was a director of Morris County Department of Transportation, and on September 11th, Frank's office set up a VIP Chamber of Commerce trip in Morris County. Frank's staff was supposed to coordinate the entire event in Frank's absence. You know, on that same day, Frank was planning a trip out to California with him and his wife, Debbie. He was supposed to fly out of Newark Airport to attend a transportation show in California. On September 9th, 2 days before he was getting ready to pack for the airplane, Frank decided he needed to stay home and make sure the VIP trip went without any issues. He canceled his plane tickets for him and his wife. The plane flight that Frank canceled was United Airlines Flight 93. This is the same plane that was hijacked and crashed into Shanksville, Pennsylvania. Now, earlier this year, my wife and I, who were attending with my kids out in Pittsburgh, we were attending a hockey game, and we had planned on our drive back to stop at the United Airlines Flight 93 Museum and Memorial. You know, it was so touching walking around that museum, and you know, I was looking for a name of another transportation colleague who was killed on that plane, and in one of the glass displays, you know, was her burnt driver's license. You know what? If anybody was ever at Pearl Harbor in Hawaii, and you get onto the Pearl Harbor, you know that feeling that you got. You know, attending the Flight 93 Memorial and Museum, you know, that was the same feeling that I had gotten. So today is definitely a day of remembrance. But you know what? When I first started, I used the words never forget. And you know what? In reality, you know what? We can't forget. But you know what? We can forget also. You know what? And I'm talking to the young people here today because they weren't here when 9/11 took place. You know what? I can bet you every single one of these people, you know what? They know exactly what they were doing at that time on 9/11, September 11, 2001. If you ask anybody in this room, they probably can tell you exactly what they were doing and where they were on that day. And you know what? Again, when you see an airplane flying low, you know, as young kids, hey, that's cool. Look at the airplane, I can see it. The people out in the audience, they don't see it that way. They see the 9/11, they see the airplanes crashing into the Twin Towers. That's our memory of 9/11. You know what? When we go to New York and we look up at those tall, tall buildings, you guys probably think, hey, wow, that's kind of cool. Again, it brings us back to 9/11. So, but you know, we're not going to be here forever, and the memory of 9/11 needs to continue. You know what? The days and months following 9/11, our police, our fire, our first aid, they were all heroes. Today, we still need to make them heroes. We really do. You know, 22 years ago, terrorists invaded our country, and we need to continue to remember that day. And you know what? We need to continue these memorials, these 9/11 memorials. You know what? As you can see, they're beginning to disappear. We can't have them disappear. We need to keep on remembering that. We need you to help us not to forget. This country cannot forget. So what I'm asking each of our young people today, you know, I'm asking for your help to help this country, to help this state, to help our town carry on the memories of those 7 people who died from this town and those 2,977 people who were murdered on September 11, 2021. You know what? With your help, no one will ever forget. Thank you very much. Excuse me? You could also sit down. I'm sorry about that. And I also want to, and there's some seats over here if you want to fill in. I also see Board of Education President Vanita Khanna. I'm not sure if I mentioned Pam Charles, Vice President, and Matthew Block from the Board of Education also. We still have a couple seats up here as the Boy Scouts are exiting. So at this time, I'd like to invite Livingston High School teacher Ernie Caneo up for reflections of 9/11.
Good evening, everyone. It's an honor to be here again this evening. I guess I've been part of the ceremony for about 12 years or so when Bunny Ratner asked me to get some of my students involved to speak about their, I don't want to call them recollections, but thoughts on 9/11 as a young person in our community. And like I said, it's a real honor to be part of the Livingston ceremony. I don't live in town, but I've taught at the high school. I'm on my 25th year now. So I really feel like this is my adopted hometown. I hope that's okay with all of you. To echo a little bit of what Mayor Vieira said, like so many of us have memories of that day, but of course my students don't. And what was even a little bit more frightening this year was 2 of my colleagues are 23. They were born in 2000. So some of my colleagues don't have a memory of that day. So it's really our responsibility, I feel the responsibility, to not only teach it to my students and to tell the stories that we all lived through and that other people were not as fortunate to live through of what happened that day, to keep the memory of September 11th alive and to keep doing it in schools as much as we do the Boston Tea Party or anything else from our history. It really hit me when my 2 colleagues said they were born in the year 2000, and I was here at this school. Keeping that memory alive is really important to me, and I try to do the best I can in my United States history classes for my sophomores and my juniors. And I ask one of my juniors, after they finish junior year, he's now a senior, to speak and give some thoughts on what 9/11 might mean to young people and how they reflect on it. And the student I chose this year to give our speech is Livingston High School senior Zach Ledesma.
Hello, good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you, for allowing me to speak. It truly is an honor. Thank you, Mr. Cuneo, and all of you for being here, of course. So I'll try and keep it brief for you all, because I know there are much more important people than me who will be speaking tonight. It's almost impossible to capture an event like the September 11th attacks in words, and for somebody who is not alive to experience them, it truly is impossible. Such a morning is beyond description for those of my generation and myself who were not there for the broadcasts, who did not yet know friends or family who worked in the buildings or in the streets below. So our context comes not from our own lived experiences, but from photographs and museums and textbooks and videos. And these mediums, especially when regarding our geographic relation to the city, do, of course, carry a dramatic weight in comparison to some other events in history, naturally. Even as a native of the West Coast myself, I only moved here in 7th grade. Walking through the halls of the museum where the towers once stood, it does remain one of the most moving events of my life. And yet, despite this impact that a lot of us often feel, it does sometimes become an abstraction, another notch in the timeline, like with other events in history, which, of course, as the past 2 speakers have illuminated, is a habit that we must abandon. And I think we say that not just because of the event's recency, but because of its relevance. Because there are watershed moments in history before which there is one nation and after which there is another. There was an America before the morning of September 11th, 2001, and there was an America after. And I and many of those my age, most of those my age, all those my age, have only known the nation born of the dust of ground zero, who has, to whatever degree it can, tried to move forward from such a dark event. However, this new interpretation is, I believe, at times too weak. It does not fully convey just what our parents and our friends and our teachers and our leaders faced in the months and the years afterwards. It does not describe with the proper reverence the sacrifices of those who placed their lives and their livelihoods on the lines in service of strangers who they did not know. I believe our generation and all generations must appreciate the costs that all Americans paid in trying to heal, because my generation in particular, we've inherited a nation rebuilt, but we don't always appreciate what it took to rebuild it. And in a time as seemingly divided as our own, we must appreciate that history has proven repeatedly that Americans are not a fractured people. We shared and continue to share bonds which tragedy have tested and which remain unbroken. So today is a somber reminder, of course, of the hatred that humanity can enact on itself, yet so too is it a memory of the American ideal, of neighbors helping neighbors, of the foregoing of those things which stand between us and the embrace of that which binds us together. That is why this day, I believe, is worth remembering. Thank you all very much.
Thank you very much. Is John McKean, Assemblyman McKean is arriving. Assemblyman, I'm sure you may have a couple words for us.
Sure, thank you. And apropos of today, while I was driving here on JFK, there was a big flood, as you can imagine. And who was there but one of Livingston's finest, you know, with a big stick trying to make their way to, I yelled at the window. I said, "Be careful out there. What are you doing?" But it made me think of all of the first responders and all those who rush toward danger as opposed to move away from it. Mayor, I've been here in the back, and your words were terrific. And to the members of the council, it's an honor and privilege to be here and share this with you, and many that became before you, because this is the 21st year, maybe absent one or two for COVID, that I've had the opportunity, the privilege of representing you, and to be here to say a few words. I get sad when I think about this day. I was mayor of West Orange 22 years ago, and my brother was in one of the towers. There's a young man, Mr. Zellman, whose brother is usually here. I don't know if he's here today. But I think of how lucky I am, as my brother was one of the fortunate ones, because of the first responders, to get out and get to safety, and the brother of Mr. Zellman here from Livingston wasn't. So I think of that often. I think of my brother because when I heard the thunder today and the sirens, I know that brings up thoughts to him, as he literally could hear the planes, the jets bearing down on the towers. I know the sirens are something that to this day means something and haunts him. Beyond the just about 3,000 that died in the towers that day, and in Washington, and of course in the fields of Pennsylvania, there's been more than 3,000 that have died from 9/11 related incidents or injuries. There's been more than 7,000 that died in either Iraq, or in Afghanistan, and just countless others whose lives have been so impacted. When I think of that day more than anything, I think of those images of people leaving and running from the towers as the first responders made the way for them to do that. As some of them fell, others picked them up as they continued to move. And as that soot and its mud baked all over their clothing, you couldn't any longer tell whether or not they were old, whether they were young, whether they were black, white, what their ethnicity, race might be. You couldn't even tell gender. But you know what they all were when they left? They were all Americans. And as the young man who was just so wonderful spoke before, This is a day to remember that we're all Americans. And while we can't and should never all agree on certain issues, we should agree that the institutions, these great institutions that were given to us almost 250 years ago, are what just safeguards our ability to be able to disagree and making this country the great place that it is. So I thank you so much for allowing me to share a few words. This means so much to me. God bless you all, and God bless America.
Thank you, Assemblyman. And before I introduce our town manager, for those in the hallway, if you want to, there are some seats up in front here that you can sit down. But at this time, I'd like to introduce Livingston's town manager, Barry Lewis.
Thank you, Mayor. The first point on our program now is the reading of a poem. For those of you who have attended these many years, it's been a tradition, and Bunny Ratner for many, many years read this poem. And it's a poem that rings true anytime we have a lost loved one, but it's particularly relevant, I think, in regards to the 7 lost Livingston souls and how their memories live on and how they are still with us. So with that, I'll read the poem. Do not stand by my grave and weep. I am not there, I do not sleep. I am the 1,000 winds that blow. I am the diamond glints in snow. I am the sunlight on ripened grain. I am the gentle autumn rain. As you awake with morning's hush, I am the swift, uplifting rush of quiet birds in circled flight. I am the day transcending night. Do not stand by my grave and cry. I am not there. I did not die. The next point is, and I'll give an opportunity for our own Brian Boyle from the VFW to come up, as well as our Girl Scouts and Daisies. This is the laying of the rose portion of the ceremony, where we will read the name of each Livingston resident that died on 9/11. Brian will ring a bell in remembrance, and the Girl Scouts and Daisies will lay a rose by the wreath. So first, Luke A. Dudek. Jeffrey Brian Gardner. Donald Thomas Jones II. Ming Hao Lu. Joseph P. McDonald. John M. Poacher. Kenneth Albert Zellman. And lastly, we ring the bell and lay a rose for all of the other victims of 9/11 throughout the country, including those who have perished since. Thank you to our Girl Scouts and Daisies, and thank you, Brian. Now's a point in the agenda where we always look and certainly give the opportunity to any family members of the 7 lost Livingston souls. And I understand we have the sister of John Poacher here, Joanne DeZama, who would like to say a few words. Thank you, Joanne.
Thank you. Thank you all for coming out to this celebration of the lives lost in our community to the tragic events of 9/11. As the sister of John Poacher and 40-year resident of Livingston, I am grateful each year to sit among our community members and first responders, many who are our friends. In this day and age of social media, we are faced daily with the temptation to post negative experiences and thoughts about our own community businesses, our schools, politicians, and neighbors. It is often harder to take the time to represent things in a positive light and express our genuine happiness with experiences we have. That is why tonight, I wanted to thank each and every one of you for taking the time to come to this event. To our community members, school board members, teachers, town council members, students, and our town first responders, Boy Scouts, Girl Scouts, and many others who I probably have missed. Livingston has made this event a priority, and that has not gone unnoticed. I challenge each and every one of you to come together like we did on September 12th, 2001. Show up every day as the best version of yourself. Be a positive light in someone's life, and share all the wonderful gifts that you have with those around you. Pick someone up instead of tearing them down. Thank you.
Thank you, Joanne, for those very poignant and inspiring words. I'll just be very brief, and I want to echo what everyone else says again. My continuing admiration for the entire community and the importance that it's placed on never forgetting 9/11. I have been here. This is now my 6th 9/11 ceremony, and to see the turnout and see people continue to come out, rain or shine, is just another sign of what a great community this is, and I'm very proud to be the town manager. I also like to recognize, as did the mayor, all of our first responders, Livingston Police Department under Chief Marshutz, Fire Department under Chief Mullen, First Aid Squad, Hatsala, our municipal clerk and CFO are both here tonight as well, and so many members of the community and so many familiar faces, so thank you all. Next, we will invite the Livingston Chorus to return, and they're going to have another song for us. Before we conclude the ceremony with the benediction, playing at Taps and God Bless America, Brian Boyle had wanted to share some information.
Yes, thank you. Outstanding citizen, a role model, proactive in promoting patriotism. That describes Bunny Ratner. This coming Thursday at 7 p.m., we're going to have a service for her and a plaque to be placed at War Memorial Park. So if you can join us, that would be great. She's done so much for our town, and we have a nice plaque for her. Thank you very much.
Now for the benediction is Reverend Dan Martian from the Presbyterian Church of Livingston. Oh, there's Dan. There he is.
Please stand. To our town council, thank you. To our mayor, thank you. To the citizens of Livingston, thank you. 22 years it has been as we honor, as we remember our fallen heroes, the first responders, the police officers, the firefighters, the EMTs. But let us not forget the other heroes of that day, the other heroes that brought Livingston together on 9/11, the first 9/11. And my colleague, Rick Vossler, knows it very well. The Clergy Association got the citizens of Livingston together, to be together, to cry together, to embrace one another in a very, very horrific and tough time for our country and for Livingston. So the other heroes that really aren't mentioned, and a lot of times we clergy don't point to us and say, hey, remember us. But I'm going to say, hey, remember us. Because it was the clergy, it was the chaplains. And the first victim of 9/11 was Father Michael Judd, a fallen hero. The spiritual leaders are very important for any community to go through tough times. The spiritual leaders walk with people through the fire. They have a spiritual and a special calling to be with people, all people, regardless who they are. And I want to thank our chief for supporting the chaplain program, which I am part of, and also Rick Vossler, and we have several others that are part of the chaplain program. So thank you, Chief, because spirituality is what we need in our country, more now than ever. Spirituality will help us to go through tough times. It is that spirituality that helps us to care for one another in times like these. Will you pray with me? Lord God Almighty, with a reverent hush, we remember the ones who died at Ground Zero, the Pentagon, and Shanksville, PA. May you give those who grieve loss from that frightful day 22 years ago peace and comfort. Bless our nation as we pause and remember the resolve spirit that overcame and will overcome any tragedy. In the face of impossibilities, you provide new opportunities for us to rise from the ashes. Bless us with your love. Cover us with your mercy. Yield to us your peace as we bring peace to others. Guide us in the ways of truth and liberty. Lead us forth to be your instruments of hope as we do justice, love kindness, and walk humbly with you. Blessed are you, Holy One, for you give us the spirit not to be timid, but a spirit to be bold, so that we may fight the good fight with compassion and love. This is what you call us to do, and to do we must. Amen.
Thank you, Pastor Dan. Please be seated. In keeping the ceremony as much on par as we do when we're outside, we'll now have the playing of taps. Finally, to conclude our ceremony, please join us with the Livingston High School Vocal Chamber Chorus in the singing of God Bless America. Thank you to everyone for joining us tonight, and special thanks to all our young residents who participated, from the Girl Scouts to the Boy Scouts to the chorus. Inspiring to see the young generation carry on the tradition. Everyone have a safe evening, and we'll do this again next year. Thank you.